customization is a key aspect of an application or a product, and especially if it has to cater to the need of multiple customers. For example, take a non-premise product or a SaaS-based product. If it has to be deployed for multiple customers, the need is that each of the customer require different set of business rules, workflow, the data that they capture. So what happens eventually is you end up having a lot of source code in order to bring in those requirements, and it leads to a lot of maintenance effort and then hence lowers the productivity as well. So we need to bear in mind that when we build applications or products, we keep the configurability aspects of the application in mind so that it's pretty much easier to cater to different requirements rather than going and modifying it in the code. So we look at what are the different customizations that are even possible in an application. To begin with, the most important or most common customization is to deal with view level customization. So one thing that every customer would have in fact requested an ISP, or if you're providing an application for multiple customers, the customers might have asked you is to provide white labeling, right? The theme and logo of your application needs to match the theme and logo of the end customer. This is one common requirement, and it's in order to achieve it, there are lots of theme frameworks that are available directly from technologies like .NET or Java, and or if not, you could build a theme framework and build in the automatic customization capability here. So you might have a metadata stored for each of the customer and render the theme and the logo based on the metadata. So this is one common requirement, and to handle it, it's a simple metadata storage and simple framework is necessary in order to handle such a requirement. So the next common requirement is to have different kind of data capture for each of the customer, right? So when you develop with certain basic fields in mind for an entity, let's say. And let's take an entity called employee. Say you have 5 fields for that entity, and if you are deploying the application to 2 different customers, customer A could ask for 3 more fields and customer B could ask for 3 more fields. One way that normally people handle is to go and add all the 6 additional fields to the basic entity and have like they write an implementation code of if-else to differentiate if it's from customer A or customer B and then do it. So this is fine for 2 customers, but if you take the same solution to multiple customers, your code becomes pretty much non-manageable in very short time. So the approach you need to do is to bring in the data field customization, which allows the entity itself to be extended runtime by the business user. So imagine you give the privilege to the customer administrator to be able to add more fields to an entity at a runtime. So if you want to bring in such a feature, so you have different approaches available in front of you, right? One approach is to go for a flat table, which is like you have an entity called employee. You have another table called employee extension having some random columns like column 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. And you have a metadata column which says for customer A, column 1 means maybe a social security number, column 2 means his age, and so on. Similarly, the metadata information for customer B could also be maintained. So during runtime, what happens is the metadata for these columns are taken to figure out which customer has got what columns and what data are stored, and then it's combined with the main table and presented back. So this is one common approach you could follow to store extension fields or to bring dynamism to your entity, to your entities. The advantage of this is it's better in performance because you could introduce indexes quite easily, and the search can be specific to the type of the column and so on. But the downside of it is you're limited by the number of additional columns that you could bring to the entity. But so if you are very clear on the number of extensions that you might support for entity, or if you could draw a boundary on the number of extensions that you are going to support, flat table approach is a better one to follow. The other approach is to go for a key value pair. In this mode, all the columns and values are stored as key and value. So if for the same example, for customer A, you could have columns like social security number and age as key, and the respective value as values in different rows. So row 1 is going to have column social security number and its value. The row 2 is going to have the age and its value. Now the advantage of this approach is it offers great scalability, or it does not have any constraint or limit on the number of extension fees that you can introduce. The downside is if you are offering a search based on the additional fields you're adding, then it becomes a little cumbersome, and the search itself might be slower because it's not possible to index it very well and so on. So these are two common approaches people follow to bring in customization at a data field or an entity level. The other customization that you would also require is to be able to manage the core fields in your forms or grids. Right? Assume you have 10 fields that are embedded in your form or grid. There could be a situation where customer A would want to call these fields differently. For example, the display name of these fields should be different from customer A to customer B. Right? In this case, you can go in for a feature called data view customization, wherein all the display names or the taxonomy of the customer can be maintained as metadata, and then you could render it. And just not the taxonomy, you could also have requirements that customer A would not want to have to field A and B mandatory, but customer B would want. In this case, again, you can go in for a metadata based approach where the fields and the attributes of the fields, like the visibility of it, the order of it, and all these can be pretty much maintained as metadata, and while rendering, this could be combined with the form and grid to finally show to the customer. So this is again a very useful feature you could utilize to bring in the configuration for different customers. The other challenge when you're dealing with configurability is to deal with different business rules. Imagine a scenario where you are calculating leaves in an employee management system. The rule or the logic of calculation of leave is going to be definitely different from one organization to another organization. If you have to achieve both of these in a single code base, the one and only way you're going to be able to achieve is to have an if-else condition segregating different customers and doing it. Now that is going to become cumbersome, and hence if you have such a need, a better approach to go for is to adopt business rule customization. So in this feature, what you would do is give the ability for the end user to completely define parameters and maybe the mathematical calculations itself for the leave calculation, and that would be stored as a metadata which would be picked up by the business rule engine and run. So this feature is very necessary in addition to the data fields and data view customization, because without these it's not possible even to do any business logic with the additional fees that we have added during I mean, if a business user comes and add any additional fees that you have introduced as a part of customization. So business rule customization again could be a complete unit or component that you build at a framework level, and it would definitely have two parts to it: an end user editor portion where a business user can come and devise a rule or compose a rule, and then an engine which executes this rule, which is more consumed by the developer. In addition to the business rule, there are systems which would also need workflows to be customized. We'll again take the example of an employee management system. Now, when an employee is added or when an employee is discontinued, the workflow or the steps that has to be taken could be quite different from an organization to another organization. So if you need to cater to these two requirements, you need to be able to customize the workflow itself. Now, some of the workflows could be purely development centric, right? But it is advisable to give the ability to your business user to go and modify the workflow steps and so on, so that you do not keep creating multiple workflows in your code. So what has to be done here is to have a workflow metadata that typically represents the different steps and the way the workflow has to be processed. The workflow metadata itself can be defined by the end user, and you will have a workflow engine which picks up this metadata and runs. So a combination of a business rule customization, workflow customization, data view customization, and a field customization makes your product quite powerful, and you could have a single code base and achieve different requirements that could lead to a lot of that could lead to a manageable and maintainable